Okay, let's start. I will say the opening chant by myself. An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Okay, so we're going to be doing case 53 tonight. Obaku's dreg slurpers or Obaku's drinkers, according to which version you want to use. But first, I think that why don't we go back to last week and just see if there's any remaining or outstanding reflections that you might have about the case from last week. Master of Ma is unwell. And just let's just take a few comments on that. And then us three will make a few comments too. But just keep it short. Just what, if in a week intervening, what remains or what comes to mind just immediately when you consider that case. And you could just raise your hands. I think just like this, I'll see it. Does those look like any immediate responses? So that's okay. So I just feel like it's, I don't know if it's a warm evening or if it just seems like a long time ago, a week ago. We've been thinking about this all week, so it's on our minds, but it may not be on your minds. So if not, Ross?
Well, I had my second booster the other day, and I felt unwell, and that was okay. I was moderately disturbed or, wanting it to be different, and I just accepted it was okay. And I, was slothful. I took naps. I felt a little foggy in my study group, but I just accepted that, and it was okay. And I'm glad that I did get the booster, and I prefer that little moderate setback versus something more serious. Thank you.
Yeah, it starts someplace. Thanks for the warning. I get mine on Friday, so tomorrow, so we'll find out. Anybody else?
So I'll say something. I think what I was left with was this sense of balance between, not one, not two, like this really almost perfect balance that, I just felt very warmly about, I think, all week. So I just wanted to say that it was just something, it's almost like something in nature or that is just perfectly balanced. And it just kind of stayed with me, I think, all week. I also really appreciated everybody's contribution. It really expanded my, everybody. I mean, there was just so much that people said that really made a difference to me. So thank you.
Julianne?
Yeah, I definitely thought of this koan today, actually, because I kind of had sort of a mild injury to my knee, and so I went swimming, and I was thinking, well, that's, kind of the moon faced Buddha to be injured. But then it was so sunny when I was swimming today because it was so hot. So it came back to me anyway. That's all.
You were injured? I didn't hear that you were injured.
Just a minor bruise.
I
Yeah.
see.
But I didn't want to do my usual workout, so I went swimming, and it was really sunny.
Yeah. Risha?
Yeah, I can say something. I think that the way this kept presenting itself to me this week in this way, which is when it's possible to really accept the circumstances, like I'm gonna really take them in. I'm really gonna show for them. All of me shows up, and I have everything that I need. That's what came up for me. Watching one person in particular as they were getting ready to die, it's like, it's all just what it is. It is what it is. He's up for being there, and every part of him was engaged with that process. There was nothing that was absent, and so he was able to meet his circumstances. It's very reassuring to me somehow, We have everything we need to face whatever if we actually just accept that we need to do that.
Yeah.
Truly.
Well, since I knew we were going to be asking this question, I thought about it pretty conceptually in contrast to our tonight's case. I couldn't help it. And I just thought that this is just a prime example of non-duality that Sojin was always talking about, or non-discrimination, really, in a way, what Ryoshin is just talking about, that you just deal with whatever comes up. And because it's really just basic Buddhism. In order to do that, we need to let go of ourselves, really, our self-grasping. So that was my conceptual thought about it. Is in the drama between life and death, where the moon Buddha just lives a little bit, and sun lives a long time. That got my attention the first time around. Second time, it's like, no, that's not such a big deal. It's more a matter of whatever happens, I'll go with that, no problem. And he really meant it. He really meant it. Okay, so let's move on to today's case. I hope you've all had a chance to read it. Yamada's version is what we'll be working from primarily, or his interpretation of it. So if anybody would like to just go ahead and just hold forth on what you make out of this case. Just keep it relatively brief, but what'd you take out of this?
Ron, you don't want to read it?
I can read it, or we can both read. I'm sorry. She's right. Helen's right.
And Ron, were you going to do a little case introduction and background first?
Oh yeah, we have an outline, and I'm not following it. Okay. So I'm a little scattered myself. So this case is is about Wangpo, and Wangpo or Obaku. Obaku in Japanese, Wangpo in Chinese. It could be Wangbo as well. And this was the first Zen I ever read when I was 18 years old. I was a bicycle messenger in San Francisco, and I won't tell you why I wound up with this book, but I did. And The Zen Teachings of Huang Po by John Blofield, which Ken Nab is holding up. And this book has been, well, it came out in 1958. This is in the Elvis years. So this is way before the wave of Buddhism and Zen hit the bookstores and libraries. So this is like one of the earliest books. And I read it, and at that time, I said I was 18, I was a bicycle messenger in San Francisco. And it just is like hardcore, let go of your thinking, let go of your conceptions, don't attach to your thought process, don't attach to your conceptions. So when I was riding my bike around the financial district in San Francisco, I tried not thinking as I'm riding my bike. And of course, I couldn't do it, but the effort to do it made me curious because I realized I couldn't really do it. But at the same time, I realized that something was different. There was a possibility of something different than what I was used to. Even though I couldn't really sustain it, I could get a little bit of a taste of it. And I sort of gave up on it, but it stuck in my mind as being worthy of being interested in and following up at some point. And I don't know, so I've been rereading this book of his talks. This is basically in the, I think he died in 850, so this is in the 800s. And Huang Po's talks from the 800s are in this book of the Zen Teachings of Huang Po. And this case shows up in the book in one of his original teachings, only in a little more simplified version. And my feeling about Huang Po is that, or Obaku, is that he's just really hardcore. If you read this book, it's like unrelenting, hardcore, let go of your thinking, let go of your attachment to your conceptions, and just be direct, just right, straightforward. Don't go through this whole mental machinations that we tend to go through, just almost unconsciously. And it's unrelenting how he stays with that more than any other teacher who I've known or read about. So this guy is really hardcore, and he's coming on strong. But I find it very refreshing. Other people may find it too limiting. So we'll read the case twice through, and then you can comment on it, or we can comment on it. So Ryosha, you want to start?
Okay. Obaku instructed the assembly and said, "You are all drinkers of bliss. If you continue on your way like this, where will the today be? Do you know that in the great empire of Tong, there is no master?" Now a monk came forward and said, "What would you say to the fact that in various places there are people who accept students and direct their assemblies?" Obaku said, "I don't say that there is no Zen. I only say that there is no Zen master."
Thank you.
Obaku instructed the assembly and said, "You are all drinkers of lees. If you continue to go on your way like this, where will the today be? Do you know that in this great empire of Tang, there is no Zen master?" Now a monk came forward and said, "What would you say to the fact that in various places there are people who accept students and direct their assemblies?" Obaku said, "I don't say that there is no Zen. I only say that there is no master."
Okay. So you've all read this, and I hope you have, and given it some thought or non-thought. What's your take on it? And don't worry, you don't have to be correct or an expert or particularly insightful. Just whatever comes into you, whatever it appeared to you in this case? Sue?
Well, I don't understand it, but for some reason I can relax into it, which I could not do with the case we studied last week, which I just resisted the whole time. And I don't know why. But at some point, I think the Zen master is a useless term because it sets up something, an expectation or a hierarchy. And maybe there's something in there for those of us who are a little shy about or not confident about our own understanding, to claim something, in our study, in our understanding. And that's as far as I can take it, folks.
Okay. And what would the alternative feel like?
That there is a Zen master and there's a hierarchy, and I'm not it, I suppose.
No, I mean, what's the alternative that you would feel more comfortable with?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Well, can you think of a relationship where a Zen master would be useful?
Where Zen master would what? Your voice faded.
Be useful. Be useful.
All the time. All the time. Sojin was someone who saw me, and I figured I had a totally different view of a lot of things than he did, but he taught me a lot. So I think that maybe it's about that mutual learning and being with and accepting the other person as he is.
Yeah. Okay. I hear that. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Carol, do you have your hand up, or are you just adjusting your set? We can't hear you.
Okay, I'll say something. Okay. Well, at first I read this one way, and now I'm seeing it a different way. First, I thought he is very critical, just that there's no Zen masters, like none of you are Zen masters. But now on second read, I'm seeing there are no Zen masters, or no Zen master, one Zen master in this interpretation, because we're all our own Zen master. We're all, have to find our way, follow our way, and, stand on your own 2 feet. So that's now how I'm seeing it. So, but I'm not quite sure if that, what he actually meant.
Okay. Blake?
I forgot what I was going to say. Just with regard to Mel, I always like what Sue was saying. I don't really remember. I've said this before, and maybe I'm just repeating myself, but I don't remember him teaching so much. Like, he never said anything to me like, oh, I'm turned or I'm woken up. It was more his attitude, and the way like he'd interact with me, his interaction with me and others, but mostly just to me. It wasn't like a verbal thing. And perhaps some of you feel that way as well. And that just brings me back to the koans. It's a lot of behavioral stuff going on here. And I also just want to say that it seems, I mean, probably you didn't plan it out, but there's this thread going through all the koans, and maybe that's just the way all the koans are, but there seems to be some thread going on here about, of course, just being in the present moment is being a good it's taking away facades is really kind of, for me, a common theme in these. Yeah, that's it.
More direct. Thanks, Blake. Kabir?
Thank you. Sorry I was late.
Okay.
For me, that the Zen master, or no one can do it for you. And, basically follow the Dharma and not so much rely on an external, deity even, or a teacher, or So I think we have to do our own work. And the teacher might be there as a guide, but we're sort of on our own. That's how I kind of see it. The support is there, but we got to do our own work.
Yes, I think that's true. Yeah. Bud.
Okay, I hope I'm unmuted.
You are.
Kind of following up on that thread, it reminds me of Sojin using the analogy of the mother hen with an egg that's about to hatch, and the mother is kind of poking at the shell, trying to help the chick get out of the shell, and the chick on the inside is poking away, trying to get out of the shell. So, that just doesn't sound like a master's touch. That's just a motherly touch. But the other thing that occurs to me is that when you talk about a Zen master, is this like a martial arts master? That kind of implies that there is something to be mastered. And what is it that is to be mastered? Can somebody really be a master of this?
Is it me freezing up, or is it Bud having a problem?
Could be. I'm kind of remote
No,
here.
it's you, Ron. He's not
I'm
having
sorry.
a problem.
Okay. Okay, I didn't hear you, but everybody else did, so that's good enough. I'm
We'll
sorry.
catch up later.
Okay. Ross.
Thank you. I've never heard Zen master. It's always been Zen teacher in the renderings that I've read, which is a little bit easier for me to read and accept and try to reflect on. And what came up this evening is the story of Zwigan, who says, who talks to himself and refers to himself, Zwigan, yes, master, don't be fooled. Yes, master, I won't be fooled. And it kind of, that echoes Sue's comment about confidence, that if we have confidence, I believe we can check in with ourselves and say, Ross, don't be fooled. Yes, I will try harder. And wherever I'm at in my understanding or lack of understanding, that's where I'm at. And I can always refine and work harder to have a deeper understanding. But it's really about this person learning and not being so-called taught by any things. And as Blake said so well, Zoja was a great reminder for us, and like a benchmark and a reference point for me, certainly, and just watching him. And I can't remember him actually teaching anything in that way. It was more of just his comportment and the way he expressed himself. And I was able to glean over the years teachings from him. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting. We're hearing similar experiences with Mel, and I think we really notice that now. Susan.
I only read this. I mean, I'd read it before, but I only read it tonight about an hour before the class. And it's been a long day at school and I'm tired. So I had this total emotional response to it. I just cried. And this line in the verse that says, "For great enlightenment, there is no teacher." And I've been longing lately to go into Dokusan with Sojin and just sit there and laugh with him. Just laugh. You know, I miss that, having fun with him. And then I read this and it said, great enlightenment is a matter of realizing that you're alone in the entire universe. And I don't have a problem with that part. But then later it says, you're one with the universe, and there's not the slightest room for a teacher to enter. You must truly realize the world. That is the greatest respect you can pay to your teacher. If such a student were to appear, how happy the teacher would be. And that sounded so much like Sojin, because he was always saying, you know, you'll make me really happy if you'll just go out and practice, right? And so I just appreciate this koan so much. I feel like he's out there saying, oh, get over it, Susan. You know, just get on with it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Ken, and then Lynn will be the last person.
Another little simile about the hands picking and that kind of thing. Socrates, in a totally different context, called himself a midwife. So he's noted, of course, for these intellectual discussions with various people, sort of informal students. And he was saying, well, I actually don't know any more than these other people do, but I do like what a midwife would do at a birth. I'm just kind of assisting or being there. And maybe so that's obviously a skill, but it's not like a teaching skill exactly. It's sort of like just helping out. So things will proceed more expeditiously and smoothly. That's all.
Well, I go back to Dwight Way days with Mel, and for decades, maybe a couple of decades, at least one, he didn't say he was a teacher. He said, I'm here just to provide a place for you to practice. And my job is to help you practice. And if you consider, if I can tell you something or help you in some way, that's fine. But that's not, but if I'm not, don't do that, that's fine too. I'm just here to help provide a place where you can practice. And then later, he became a teacher.
And he didn't do Dokusan in the beginning.
That's right. I was the first person that he tried it on.
Yeah.
And I was giggling because his study on Dwight Way was full of dust. And I thought, that's not what a Zen teacher should look like. You know, you shouldn't have your place full of dust. But it was funny to me. Okay, so Lynn, and keep it a little on the short side.
I'm sorry. When I read this, I don't see master. I see, like Mel is masterful of themselves. And then by demonstration, by example, like Mel's ordinary way, they're being with and they're showing and they're midwifing. I had a teacher, I felt this very much. There's a mutuality between teacher and student, otherwise you're just in that dual mode again. So it makes sense to me that you don't see a Buddha, you don't see a teacher. There's this immersion in the whole, as Susan referenced. That's what I take away.
immersion is a good word there. Okay, Alan, you're the last one.
When Dongshan left Yunmen and was asked what he had learned from Yunmen, he said, "I only learned half of what he taught me because I didn't want to seem disloyal." I think that applies to this koan.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I think I understand what he's saying, but you want to say what he was saying? Or you
Well,
want to interpret that?
Well, I don't think it's useful in the translation to use the word master. I think it's more useful to use the word teacher, because the master doesn't feel like a teacher. So just what I try to tell people in my own teaching experience is that no one can teach you this practice. There's only one person who is your true teacher, and that's you. And you have to work with that person to have a true teaching. So, and I think that's really simple and really true. That we make a mistake to try to put it on a teacher to teach us something. This isn't about education; it's about transformation. Education doesn't help us so much. Just as a basic idea. So we have to do it ourselves. And the sooner we get onto that, the better. And I think that's pretty much the gist of what's being said here.
Yeah, agree.
But I love it when Dongshan says, "I only learned half. I didn't want to be loyal." It's great. And I think I'm trying to think. I remember the first time I met Sojin. Maybe it was 1971, and he was sort of I think he was a priest at that point. I don't actually even remember, but he did not present himself as a teacher. But I remember he said things to me that totally opened up my understanding, just casually, just quite casually in talking. I remember what he said to me, and what is that, 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I still appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, the three of us will hold forth. Ellen will go first, then me, and then Ryushin.
Okay, well, I think this question of teachers has been pretty well talked about. There's a few other things in this that sort of have caught me. And, in this translation, he doesn't use the word dreg slurpers, but I do kind of miss that. And I think so much of what we think of as the teaching is, is like left over from what somebody said at some other point in time. And I don't devalue that totally, but I also think, those are the dregs of what people once said. And here we are reading it, but nonetheless, I think that's kind of an important thing for me to remember. And then the other thing is, he says, if you continue to go on your way like this, where will the today be? And, for me, that's really the crux of the case, that with our ideas about hierarchy and teachers and masters and so on, or our thoughts or our conceptual thinking, we aren't in the present. We're in the past, or in the future, or we're somewhere else. So, the sort of, for me, the sort of like letting go of this sort of is quite, Ron has sort of said this, but for me, he's so strong about this and so almost radical about it, of just letting go of your concepts. And, so I've been kind of immersing myself in that question of like, is that possible? And what does that leave you with? And I don't quite have an answer, but I do feel like it's really the center of this case for me.
So I'll just take off from where Ellen left off. I'd say it leaves you with an open mind. And I think that's what he's getting at, is they're looking that his students and the students in general in the monasteries that this was during the Tang Dynasty, were picking up on the words of the teacher as being it, and then trying to adapt to what the words were saying, rather than just experiencing directly their own experience. In other words, it's experience rather than thinking. It's your direct experience. It doesn't mean that you can't think. It's just that you're not holding on to your thought process as your way of understanding. It's more direct than that. Just being what's happening. That's what and if you just come up blank, that's okay. You're just blank. It's all right. We hate to be blank. We hate to not know something, but just being blank, go where that takes you. Just see. So I think that's what he's urging them to not dwell on the words, but to actually open their own mind. And maybe his words can inspire them to do that. I think that's the way the bell came on. Wherever you have today, I think except Yamada mentions that the word today could be translated as the workings of our own mind. So if you go on like this, constantly relying on the teacher's words, where will you have your own awareness of your own mind and how it's working? So it's kind of like Ross was getting at a little bit when earlier on with what was his name? What's the
Zwigon.
Zwigon.
Yeah, Zwigon.
That just to pay attention to your own awareness and open your own mind, your own awareness. And it doesn't mean to reject what your teacher is saying as being worthless, but just that we're not attaching to the words. The words can be helpful or not, but we're open to what's ever happening. And if that doesn't match our idea of what we should be doing, too bad. Just let go of the idea of what we should be doing. And in a way, I'm saying what we should be doing. So that can only go so far. But that's what I'm saying, is that just to be open and let your awareness do what it does, rather than fixate on the answer.
But Ron, what are you letting go of then?
Yeah, I think I'll stop there.
I had a question. Which was, what's the letting go in that?
It's the letting go of our mental holding on to something mental, and a thought or an idea or a picture. We're holding on to that as a way of orient, and we do that. Humans have to do that, but we do it too much. We owe way what we really need to do. That's my opinion. I think that's what he's getting at. It's letting go of the holding on to our picture in our mind. It's okay to have pictures in our mind, but it's the holding on to it that's the problem. Ryushin?
Yeah, so I get the last word. This is such a great conversation. There's so many interesting and different ways into this koan. It's so rich. I'm having other thoughts about this come up just listening to everyone. There are a couple of different aspects here that I don't know that I heard. One for me has to do with the interaction between two people within the Dharma. You can call it between a teacher and a student or not. That when you when you really show up completely with each other in the Dharma, something catalytic happens. There is no thought or conception. You're just presenting yourself to the situation and responding to what comes up. I think that's what a really good teacher does or helps us access in ourselves. So when we talk about where would the today be, today for me has to do with right now in this moment, how am I able to present to it? How am I able to drop my thoughts and my ideas about what's going on here, whether it's highfalutin ideas about the Dharma or who that other person is, but how do I completely receive this here now and respond or show up to it? And for me, it has echoes a little bit of some of the comments that Karen was making in her talk on Saturday, when we were talking about digging a little bit deeper in a situation that comes up. And a little bit deeper, you're listening to what's underneath what's going on and responding to that, because we're letting go of our ideas about what we think is going on, but we're connecting from a different place in it. So I think that this is part of what's being pointed out here. Another aspect of this, to dovetail with something Ellen was saying earlier, and I don't remember the exact story, Ellen, and you might. I read it as part of reading for this case. The idea that if a student matches his teacher, if a student is as good as or matches his or her teacher, they're only halfway there. And the other half is their own manifestation of the Dharma. So to have your teacher's understanding, if you want, is that's useful, that's some understanding, but it's completely incomplete because it's not an expression out of your own life. And so when I was reading this case and thinking about it, I kept thinking of Sawaki's Kodo's kind of pithy statement that you can't share as much of a fart with another person. You can't share enlightenment with another person. You can't share understanding with another person. It has to come out of your own body and your own experience. So that's what I'm here, what I'm reading here. Case just has so many different levels to it. It's so rich.
Thank you, Ryushin. Ross, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Ryushin's last comment reminded me of a shosan that I had with Sojin. And the story was that I've heard that in order for Zen not to wither, the student needs to surpass the teacher. And when did you surpass Suzuki Roshi? And Sojin said, it's not that I surpassed Suzuki Roshi, I'm just carrying on the Dharma for the next generation. So it was a really great, humble response, and kind of the practice just continues. It's not about somebody surpassing or being sharper than their teacher or duller than their teacher. He's just carrying it on for the next generation. I thought that was a really great response.
Right. I just want to say I appreciate that clarity, that it's not about surpassing your teacher, but your own expression. You can't carry the Dharma on unless you're doing it yourself. You can't carry the bucket for your teacher. You have to be the one carrying the bucket of the Dharma forward.
Sesshin, a 7-day sesshin up north a little bit with about 5 or 6 members of BZC. The Koan was leading, and was the teacher basically, and Mel was, or Sojin was also a teacher, but secondary to Koban Chino. Koban was the one who was doing Dokusan. And Mel asked him the exact same question that's been raised. He says, I've heard it said that we should be able to surpass our teacher. What do you think about that? And I don't remember what Koban said, but I remember that that's what Mel asked him. That was his question to Mel. And that was Mel's question. As Mel was kind of a junior to Koban's seniority in that situation. Okay, so let's move on to the instruction. this is all about the same case. So we're not drifting from the case, actually. It's just different ways of looking at the case with the instruction and the verse. By the way, the instruction was put together by Wansong, who is a commentator, and he put this together in the 1200s, even though this original for this case goes back to the 800s. So I'll read the instruction, and then we'll just go line by line, and the class, everybody can just weigh in on what that line, not everybody, but if you're prompted, if you feel the mood to do it, just comment on that line and what that line might mean to you. So I'll just read it through. It's really short, as you know, and then we'll just stay on one line at a time. And then afterwards, Ellen, Ryoshin, and I will give you our interpretations of it. Okay, so here it is. When one meets the student, one does not see Buddha. For great enlightenment, there is no teacher. The sword that fixes heaven and earth knows no sympathy. The activity to capture tigers and rhinoceroses forgets holy understanding. Now tell me, whose strategy is this? So let's go back to the first line. When one meets the student, one does not see Buddha. Anybody have a take on that? Bud.
Yeah, what I see here is that a teacher is dealing with the problems of the student or the real life situation of the student. So to see the student as the embodiment of Buddha or as Buddha or whatever is not helpful.
So what is helpful?
Well, again, it's just, the chicken and the hen and the chick. The teacher is helping the student find his way, his or her way. And so to see the student as an embodiment of Buddha, or however you want to phrase that, is not helpful. You have to deal with what the student's problems are right now.
Okay. Yeah, I get it. Sue?
Ron, have you ever seen a Buddha?
What a question. I've never even thought about it, seeing a Buddha. The whole idea of Buddha is a question mark, a big question mark in my mind. When we talk about Buddha, it's a big question mark in my mind. How about you?
Nope, never thought about it. So I wonder what this guy means. Are the people who are the ancestors people who look to see Buddha? Is that what you do, or we're supposed to do?
Well, I think I just gave you my response to that. That I can understand a teacher wanting their student to be enlightened, to be like Buddha, to be a Buddha, to have enlightenment. And as a teacher, to be successful, well, you have an enlightened student. And they're saying, that's extra. We don't need that. That's just something extra you're doing. As a teacher, you'd be making a mistake that way by trying to aim at something in particular, some image that you have in your mind or some idea you have in mind about what you want your student to be like so and so.
Yeah. So it's conceptual, you know, I've heard people in churches that I visited say, well, be like Jesus. And and so then that's their role model. And I think that there's some part of humans, maybe certainly the people I know, we're searching for something. We're reaching for something that's beyond the general realms of duality. And it is there, but it's nothing we can grasp. But it's a process, a lifelong process.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would also encourage, we're getting the same people volunteering, which is really nice. But step forward if you haven't said anything so far. Just give it a try. Kabir.
Unmute, Kabir. Unmute yourself, please.
I'll try to make this my last one. What comes up for me is that the teacher does not look for perfection, does not look for a perfect student. When he doesn't see Buddha, he just embraces everything about that student, regardless of how faulty and how imperfect the student sees him or herself. But the teacher sort of does not look for a Buddha in the student, just looks for a student. Just it's right there. And
yes.
It sort of, the teacher sort of has no expectation from the student to be perfect, just show up. And that's what comes up for me.
Yeah, I go with that. So Ross will be the last one.
Thanks, Ron. In Yamada's commentary, he says the word translated here as student also means the activity of the mind. And so when one meets the activity of the mind, one does not see Buddha. And it reminded me of Susan's story of being outside Sojin's office one day and hearing him receive a student's gripes in a very loud, forceful voice and very intense and very angry. And some days later, she said, Sojin, how was that, to receive all that? And he said, according to Susan, if I'm quoting you right, Suze, I was looking at the other side of this person. All that activity of the mind is one side, but the Buddha is that side. That what I inferred from that was the other side, to see others as Buddha, not as all that activity. That's what came up for me here. And Susan, if I misquoted you, please.
Okay. All right. Well, so let's go on to the next. For great enlightenment, there is no teacher. Any thoughts on that?
I think that's pretty much what we've been talking about, that you have to do it yourself.
Okay.
I'm also remembering that Sojin used to say that enlightenment is kind of it's a serendipity. It just happens. You can't do it without effort, but it just happens. It's not something that can be given or chased after directly.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty much along the lines of what we've been talking about. Susan?
Well, it just seems like those two lines taken together really focus on the activity. And to me, that's what Sojin was always telling us, that the enlightenment was in the activity. Right?
Yeah.
So two lines together, the activity of mind, there's nothing else. There's just the activity. That's where the enlightenment is. And it made me think a lot about, coming back to our in-person practice. We have all these activities we do in a schedule, like during sesshin, that give us that opportunity to experience that, being one with the activity. And that's where the enlightenment occurs, not like down the line, right?
Okay. Missed your last couple of words. I'm having a little trouble with my Wi-Fi.
Oh.
But I get the gist of what you're saying.
I mean, I would say in response to that, Susan, that yes, that's true, and we're in person in the center, but it's also true all the time, right? It's really true all the time.
Well, of course, yeah. No, I agree with you. But in terms of our practice, there's a reason why we do all those things. Mm-hmm. It's not just made up,
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Training to realize that enlightenment is experienced in the activity. So take that out into our lives, right?
Right.
There's no difference.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so let's move down to the next line. The sword that fixes heaven and earth knows no sympathy. Ross?
I just have a question on this one. I highlighted Yamada's commentary where he says, when it comes to the matter of enlightenment, all such personal feelings must be put aside. Lately, it seems that at BZC, there's been a lot of emphasis on feelings and expressing our feelings, more so than in earlier times in my experience here. And I'm wondering how personal feelings figure into waking up, and how do we acknowledge our feelings, and if that gets in the way of our awakening, or if it contributes to our awakening.
That's a big subject.
It is, and that's the my last hand raise for the night, I promise.
I think that's a really good question and a really big question, Ross. I do. Yeah, and I have actually a lot to say about it, but I don't think this is kind of the moment. So,
well, Yamada brought it up, and I'm just carrying it on to the next generation.
But I think the question is, what does this line mean? Because it is kind of provocative.
Just to weigh a little tiny bit on that, maybe all such personal feelings being put aside, that could be anything about dharmas. The feelings are a dharma, just like are a dharma. And in the matter of great enlightenment, it's beyond those things, any of those things.
Mm-hmm. Blake.
I just want to say this definitely is the commentary on it was a big thing for me, because I deal with students all the time, and this comes up from time to time. Is like how to deal with everybody with equanimity and not let personal preferences and like leaning towards various types of students come up. Is just really big for me, especially this week especially. And just as a side note, if people are having flagging internet, you can always have the option of turning off your video, and that makes things stronger. I mean, I like to see your face, Ron, but anybody has the right to do that if you're in a page.
Okay.
Can I, Ron, just go back for a second to seeing a Buddha?
Yeah.
I think for me, that's about not seeing anyone in particular, whether it's a Buddha or whether it's a person I just as soon not see. It's just meeting what is. It's just meeting whoever is without any concepts about who that person is or what that person will become. You think, as a teacher, my job is to help you become a Buddha, so to speak. Or if you're in relationship in the Dharma, we're all working on the Bodhisattva path. But actually, that's just an idea. And the real work is just totally showing up to whatever is happening and whoever happens to show up to you without an idea about it. Part of what made Sojin an unusually good teacher was that he was able to receive most people equally. Whatever affinity he did or didn't have for people, he was able to meet them and accept what was deep in the superficial. I think that's part of what both of this is pointing at.
Okay, then the next line is, the activity to capture tigers and rhinoceroses forgets holy understanding. Why would you be forgetting holy understanding?
I mean, I think that's just what this koan is about. It's about letting go.
It's true. Yeah. Lynn.
Yes, I think also the letting go, but I think the unholy part is it's the capture. I think is the key word, the grasping, that it's not possible. And I forget my previous, I know it. Ron, wouldn't you like to maybe share with this group the Suzuki Roshi piece we've been studying on emotions?
No, it's too, it goes off in too many, it's a different direction.
You can send it to the group, is all I mean.
Well, it's a little bit more, I understand what you're saying. The chronic health group has been looking at a piece by Suzuki Roshi on emotions. And basically the gist of it is that emotions are fine, but we need to go into our deeper emotions rather than just fool around with our superficial emotions. That's the main message of his piece. And it's a little bit different emphasis than this, so I don't want to go there with this group, but it is a good piece. Suzuki Roshi is, you can always trust him to deliver. Okay, well, we'll come back to this in a minute when Ellen and Ryushin and I go over it. And now tell me whose strategy is this? Strategy. So I mean, it could be yours, it could be my own, it could be all of ours. But who can be this way, I think is what they're saying. Ryushin?
On this line, I didn't put my hand up.
You were highlighted, so I thought maybe you were just making a little sound in there. Okay. All right, so now Ellen and Ryushin and I will just take each of these lines. Let's see, how does this work?
Ellen's first, Ron's second, I'm third. Is that right? Or is that, no, it's Ron, Ellen, me.
Yeah, we'll go in that order. So I'll just take this.
Ron, let me just point out, we have 20 more minutes. So, if we want to get to the verse, we need to move through this pretty quickly or
Right, well, us three will move through it quickly. Yeah. So just take the first verse, the first line of the instruction. When one sees the Buddha, when one meets the student, one does not see Buddha. I just wanted to read you a quote from Sawaki Roshi, which just reminds me of, waiting to become a Buddha by practicing Zazen is like sitting in a train and being in such a hurry to get home that you get up and start running inside the train. So that's not exactly what's being said here, but I think it's making a point, which is a good point. When one meets the student, you just see the student, just see what is. You don't have to have the whole idea of Buddha, and we've already gone over that. And for great enlightenment, there is no teacher, because the teacher can't do it for you. We have to each do it ourselves, or open ourselves up to be able to experience whatever that is. Okay, so Ellen, you want to take the next two lines?
The sword that fixes heaven and earth.
No, oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Knows no.
I took your line.
You took my line. You're right. That's fine. The sword that fixes heaven and earth knows no sympathy. And, the sword in general, I think, particularly in this koan, represents whatever it is that cuts off conceptual thinking. So, and it, the sort of translation in the other version is, it settles heaven and earth. It sort of settles everything to cut off your conceptions. And the knows no sympathy, it's like, this is a longer discussion, I do think, of like how we handle emotion, but it's basically, for me, it's really that in a certain way, letting go of conceptions also involves letting go of, our sentiments. So, but it's more complicated for me than that, and I think I can't be clearer. And we have talked about it a little bit, but exactly where we go with emotion, directly into it or letting it go is, I think, an ongoing question. But I think for, Abaku, it would be, you cut that off too. So that's my interpretation of it. So Ryushin, do you want to do the next one?
Yeah, it's a clear mirror. Whatever we respond to, we just respond without adding anything else into it. Just to comment on your comment. The activity to capture tigers and rhinoceroses forgets wholly understanding. Tigers and rhinoceroses are meant to point to challenging students. Challenging because they're really capable students, or otherwise difficult or challenging and to capture or to meet them or to kind of be of a useful tool to them, forgets any concept about what you're doing. You forget any concept about where you're going or what you're trying to achieve. You see what's coming spawn from a deeper place than an idea of what you're trying to make happen, or an idea of who the person is, or an idea of exactly what you're trying to achieve, other than a deep meeting to the circumstance and that as they come. I think that's what that means. And now tell me whose strategy is this? We've already commented on that. This also typically in koans is a pointer at the teacher, saying the person whose case this is an example of this kind of teaching. So that's a part of what's going on here also, I think.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's move on to the verse. And Ellen, Ryushin, and I will just do this one directly. I'll take lines. I'll go first and do the first two lines, and then Ellen will do 3 and 4.
Ron, why don't you read the whole
Why don't-
verse first?
Yeah.
Okay. Ellen, why don't you read it?
Okay. The way is divided, the threads are dyed, too much labor. Binding the leaves, tying the flowers, it mars the ancestors. One takes skillfully the active handle of creation. Vessels designed with waters and clouds are on the lathe, clearing the tangles, smashing the tile chips, shaving off the fluff. The balance, the mirror, the scale, and the scissors. Old Obaku perceives even an autumn hair. Cutting off the spring wind through sitting, he never allows haughtiness.
Okay, and I just mention again that this verse is by Hong Zi, who actually collected these 100 cases into this collection. And this was in the 1100s. And he composes a verse for every one of the cases. So these first two lines, I think he's saying that the problem we have is that we're fussing too much. We're making too much of a big deal about things, trying to control things too much. We're trying to make everything neat and perfect. Sometimes I live in sort of the bottom of Piedmont in Oakland, Piedmont district. And sometimes when I go up there and look at the gardens, they're so perfect that they're not really, it does feel like nature to me. It feels like humans trying to make nature do something. And then every once in a while, there'll be a garden where they let nature do something. And it looks really good. It's not wild, but nature can just do what it does. So I think we humans in general have a tendency, and this is true in practice too, we fuss too much. We're afraid to just be simple and direct. We want to have kind of make everything neat, comfortable for ourselves or our situation, and have everything be orderly, which I think it's understandable that we want to make things orderly, but we can overdo it. And I think maybe Soto in particular, Soto Zen has a particular way of going about this, which is just to go into infinite detail as opposed to just being into what we're doing. We just go into detail after detail after detail. And so I think maybe sometimes we overdo it. But getting into it, I think, is great. So that's what I think the verse is going for in the first couple of lines. Too much fussing and too much dividing up into this and that. So Ellen could do the next two lines.
Okay, one takes skillfully the active handle of creation. Vessels designed with waters and clouds are on the lathe. And I think this could be interpreted either as the teacher skillfully, giving guidance, being the handle of creation, and, working on the lathe with the student, guiding the student or forming the student in some way. But I also think it could be kind of another way of looking at it would be that one takes skillfully, instead of dividing everything up, one takes skillfully the active handle of creation and brings everything together and, sort of creates a whole out of the pieces. So I think it could kind of be looked at either way and is looked at either way from the commentaries I've read. So I'm just going to leave that there.
Yeah, I particularly like the word creation. The feeling of being creative really appeals
As a
to me.
teacher or just in general?
Well, both. Mm-hmm. But I think they're actually pointing at the teacher here in particular.
Right.
Yeah, just to comment on that, waters and clouds are often analogies to students, to monks.
Yeah.
They see this as the vessels designed out of the monks are on the lathe, are being made.
Yeah.
Clearing the tangles, smashing the tile chips, and shaving off the fluff, the balance, the mirror, the scale, and the scissors. So these two lines are pointing to the impediments that students might have of different ways of talking about concepts. And the next line is about how a teacher works with those. So, and I really like the clearing the tangles. That's just a very evocative of the way thinking can be all kind of tangled up and not being able to see clearly. Smashing the tile chips. I didn't see this in the commentary, but what came up for me immediately was the story between Baso and Nangaku about Nangaku sitting sitting zazen in order to become a Buddha. And Baso saying, well, that's like trying to polish a tile in order to make a mirror, right? So these are the tile chips of your ideas about what you're going to achieve by sitting. Shaving off the fluff, you may have read in the commentary, is a direct comment on the very, very fine little fluffy feathers that birds can have. So not allowing anything to be left back at all, not even the finest hair, the finest feather. All of that has to be dispelled or released.
But when you say feather, Ryushin, what exactly, I mean, what is that a metaphor for?
I don't know. What thought do you have?
Well, I think it's thoughts or conceptions. I think he's saying, everything has to go. So.
Right. I'm sorry. That's I thought that. Yeah. Thank you for making that explicit. The balance. So a teacher will use a balance or a scale as a way, if you will. That's a way of saying a certain eye or a way of assessing where a student's at and how to respond. That's a way a teacher has to work effectively. Those are skills. A mirror is a clear reflective surface. So a student can see who she or he is. And the scissors are that which kind of shapes or cuts away. That's what I got.
Okay. And, again, I think the sword, the scissors, all of these things are, about cutting away your, what you kind of make up.
Can I,
yeah.
Before you move on, go ahead, go finish your thought though.
No, well, another word that came up for me was habit for some reason. And, the kind of habitual way that we perceive and think about things. And so, I think about cutting away habit, or mental habits sort of. Go ahead, Ron.
One of maybe my most favorite quote from Suzuki Roshi is, it's in his chapter in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind about effort. And what he says is, the effort that we make is letting go of what's extra. Mm-hmm. That's about the best quote I've ever heard for Zen practice. I really like that. You can't go wrong with that.
Mm-hmm. Old Obako perceives even an autumn hair. And I really like that line because I feel like there's just such a subtlety, in the way that we hold on to things. And well, in the way I hold on to things anyway. And the sort of being able to, keep going with sort of releasing that or letting go of that is, for me, it's really an interesting thing. And it's also, I'm really interested in why I don't want to do it when I don't want to do it. So that's a really ongoing relationship that I have to this koan, is that both I'm willing and I'm interested and I feel liberated by this. And I also notice myself, holding on and clinging to my concepts and wondering, why do I do that? So, and it's not like I can't give you an answer, but it's like I keep asking, if I feel this freedom and this liberation, why do I still hold on? And so I really like that line. So the last one is cutting off the spring wind through sitting. And the other version doesn't include through sitting. I don't know why he put that in. I don't like that, but the spring wind is sort of conceptual thinking. He never allows haughtiness. So he never allows himself, and we should not allow ourselves to feel particularly outstanding if we pursue this path, is really what I think that means.
Yeah.
We have 5 minutes before we finish.
Okay.
Time check.
So thank you, everybody. I don't have any final thing to say except that we'd like to know after these 4 sessions, what your response is and what you liked or what you didn't like in it. And anybody wants to speak up, please do. Alan?
And if you want to include in that, would you like to see other series like this?
I want to thank you all. I think you're very brave to come out here and talk to us about these koans. So thank you. It's been quite excellent.
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, quite good.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I want to thank you all. I think this is difficult to read through these things and to engage with them, and maybe not for you. And I know, because I took a lot of classes with Sojin, he would never have said that, but I appreciate it. I really appreciate the sort of, I mean, I've said this before, but I used to sit down when I first started reading this and feel literally like I was walking through cement. I mean, it was just like I was beating my head against a wall. I didn't understand them. And just to get from beginning to end was a challenge. So I really want to thank you all for pursuing this with us.
Sue?
Well, I really want to thank you. I would never look at this stuff if I didn't have.
Yeah, it's
never.
It's daunting. Where'd Sue go?
Yeah, she's down out there. Yeah.
I'm here.
Kabir and Carol?
Yeah, I think it's so useful to hear the different points of view. Just reading it, I just don't get it, see all the things. So having so many different points of view and seeing different things is so helpful. I mean, including the 3 of you who have really studied them, but others, bringing in their thoughts. Very useful, really opens it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to say we worked really hard and talked long and hard about how to do this as a class. And so we'd be really interested in hearing what really worked for you, what helped and what was missing or anything like that now or later.
Kabir?
I just want to say thank you, and I would like to see more of these kind of classes. I really appreciate it. At the end, I kept remembering the Heart Sutra as you guys were talking, especially the smashing of tiles. Like there's no tiles and there's no eyes, no ears. So I broke my promise. Sorry. My weakness. Thank you.
What was your promise?
That will be my last question before.
Oh, I see. That's okay.
So I think we're out of time now.
Okay, well, Ryushin, I don't want to say goodbye, but we have to. You want to do the end chant?
Okay. Thank you so much. Beings are numberless.